Well, we are going to do things just a little bit different than we normally do for a sermon series or a message in a message series. In just a minute, I'm going to bring some people up on stage who know a whole lot about parenting because I don't want to be the only source, right? We're talking about parenting today because we're in the middle of this series we call How to Get Life Right. And look, if you have found yourself in a place where like today's your first day with us and you have no idea what's going on, have no fear. You can go to tcat.church/life and you can catch up on all the messages you've missed previously. We put all three of them up there with some discussion content. I did get a couple of text messages on Monday that there was some technical difficulties with the video on Monday. We uploaded it, we refilmed it, uploaded it again, so that message is available if you missed that one as well, so have no fear on that. But today, we're going to continue this topic or this idea that we're trying to figure out how to get life right. Because life is complicated. We've been saying this from week one. Life is complicated. You don't need me to tell you that. This isn't what I get paid for, but life is complicated. You want to get it right, and we want to help. This is really the key of what this whole message series has been about. And so we picked 4 topics from life that it's really hard to get life right if you don't get these 4 things right. And then we've been asking you this kind of hard question from week one. It's this: am I trying to get it right, really? Right? With each of those. So week 1, we talked about marriage. Week 2, we talked about money. And then, last week, when we continued this idea, we talked about work and your job and your career path. And then today, we are talking about parenting. Now, I don't know how many of you all have experienced this, but I know for me personally, when I was about to become a parent, I had this very specific image in mind, okay? For the new parents or people who aren't parents yet, maybe you think the same thing. I thought that when we took our very first family photo, this is what it was going to look like, right? It's going to be this wonderful family, and we're all going to be smiling, and everyone's going to be happy, and it's going to be perfect to have these kids. They're going to do everything that I wanted them to do, and life is going to be perfect in every way. But sooner or later, all of a sudden, those of us that are parents, we kind of find ourselves in this place. It looks more like this. Right? And we're like, how did we get here? Oh my gosh, what happened? Like, this is one kid later, and look at all of the joy that's been kind of sapped out. And here's the truth, okay? Parenting is hard, all right? And everything we're going to talk about today, everything we're going to try to set up for you, is not said lightly, and it's not something we've just kind of come to these conclusions easily. I remember, I'll never forget this. My wife and I joke about this all the time. We were 2 kids in. We had our first 2, and we were at the zoo in Louisville, Kentucky, and we had a stroller because Kaylin, we just had to put her in a stroller. If you didn't, she was everywhere. Caden is always, like, I'm not bragging. He was always been that kid that whatever we told him to do, he would do. The other 3 in varying degrees less of that, okay? But which is fine, okay? This is how it works. The older kid, the first kid always does everything they're supposed to, and then it kind of changes. But we're in the zoo. We're pushing Kaylin in the stroller, and there's this young couple behind us. You can tell they just got engaged, right? And she's got the little ring on, and they're so excited. And we overhear her say, when we have kids, we are never using a stroller. Like, never using a stroller. And the only people chuckling are people who already have kids, okay? I was like, we're never using a stroller. Look at that. We'll just carry our kids everywhere we want to go. And I'm like, you just wait, You have no idea. But this is the thing. Like, part of me inside as a parent, we want to just kind of dump that on the kid. It's like some sort of hazing that takes place with new parents, okay? There's some of that. But we don't want to do that to you, all right? And no matter what stage of parenting you find yourself in, there is actually something you can do. Like, you can continue to grow in your parenting, to make wise choices for your kids. So, but here's the thing. Parenting is difficult because it's the one thing that is really difficult to find out whether you're doing it right? How can we know if we're getting parenting right? How can we actually know if we're getting it right? We've got a baby in front of us, For those of you that have been parents before, that somebody lays this child in your arms, and you're like, you're going to trust me with this human being, all right? And there's some terror in you, and then all of a sudden they're graduating high school. It feels like in the snap of a finger or the blink of an eye. And so how do you know if you're getting it right? For many of us, the answer to that question might be like, let's just see how they turn out, right? When they're 30, we'll just look back and go, 50%'s not bad. 2 of them are okay. The other 2, And so, it's okay. We'll just see how they turn out, okay? This isn't actually a helpful view either, though some of us might have that, because how we parent today influences who our children become tomorrow. This is one of the things that's so important to us as a church. And for those of you that have babies and young kids that are on the other side of this wall, you've heard us say it before. Maybe even if you don't have kids or you've got grandkids, you've still heard me say this before, that we want to partner with you as parents, that we feel like it takes a village. It's one of the things that I'm so grateful for. I mentioned it earlier, the fact that I feel like there's so many of you all that know my kids, that know who they are. You see them at school, or you see them after school, you see them here. You text them, or you call them, or you reach out, or you know about their birthdays. That's incredible. And I feel like that's what Christian community is really supposed to be. Now, some of you all didn't grow up with that, or some of you don't feel like you have that yet. Let me just say, there are a whole lot of people in this room that would love to be a part of your village. There's a whole lot of people that are a part of this church that would love to be a part of your village as you sort this out. Now, there's one grand idea that I want to kind of put in front of you that's really going to be what shapes the rest of our conversation today. When I bring these moms up here in a second, we're really talking through this lens. And so when you're thinking about parenting, who better to go to than someone who is considered to be one of the wisest people who ever lived, and his name is King Solomon. And King Solomon said something really interesting and very specific about parenting that I've always believed, that we've tried to do in our own parenting, that we don't always get it right, and that I would just encourage you as parents to think about as well. He said this in Proverbs chapter 22. Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. In other words, like you wind up a car, when you get toy cars, you wind them up and you kind of point it in the direction you want it to go, and then it takes off in front of you. Solomon seems to think that there's something connected to that in the way that we talk about parenting kids as well. That you can set them in a certain way, and as they grow and they're moving in that direction, you set the direction and they set the pace, and then all of a sudden they end up where you hoped they would go. There's a couple big implications in this not to miss. Number one, there is something we as parents do. There is some responsibility we as parents have to make this happen. But also that we have the opportunity to parent in a certain direction. Do you ever think about that? That you're parenting. You could parent in a certain direction. That the choices that you make for your kids and the hope that you make as a part of what, who you hope they'll be, you're parenting in a direction. This is why I tell young couples when we're going through premarital counseling, like eventually you're going to have kids, and when you do, here's something you really need to think about. When you have kids, what do you want your kids to grow up to do? And I don't mean say they want to be an astronaut or I want them to go to college. That's not what I mean. It's like when your kids move out of the house, because you're raising adults, when they move out of the house, what do you hope your relationship with them and their relationship with their siblings look like? You should parent in that direction. So one of the things that Shannon and I have always said, right, and have we always got it right? No. But one of the things we've always said is we want our kids to want us around when they don't have to have us around anymore. It's one of the, it sounds so simple, but it's one of the things we've parented towards. That we want our kids to want us around when they don't have to have us around anymore. Not that they're dependent upon us, or not that oh my gosh, Dad's got to save the day. That's not what I mean. But that in some way, our relationship, even though it will change, will not end. We've parented in that direction. Now, I don't want to give you, you can take whatever you want. You can use that and say, look, honey, I came up with something great. I don't care. But you need to parent in a direction. That's the whole point of what Solomon, I think, is trying to get across. You have a choice. Now, one of the ways that we do this here at church, you probably heard us talk about this thing called Orange before. We're going to have somebody on stage in a minute that actually is going to know way more about this than me, and I want to give her a chance to talk about it. But orange is a big deal to us because it's an idea, right? It's not just a color, it's an idea. Orange represents this partnership that we as the church want to have with you as parents. That if you take these two colors, yellow and red, right? And yellow represents the light of the church, the light of Jesus, and red represents the heart of your home, and you put them together, you get orange. And so what we talk about is we want to partner with you as parents to be a part of your village. And everything that happens on that side of the wall, everything that Emily designs, every lesson the kids go through is intentional to help you as parents win as the disciplers in your house. So some of the stuff we're going to talk about in a second is super practical, okay? I can't wait for you to hear some of the practical advice they have. But all of it fits into this theme and this idea that we don't want you to have to do this alone, because parenting is hard and it's complicated. So without further ado, we're going to play the bumper, and then I'm going to bring the panel up on stage. So give us just a second to reset, and then you get to hear from some awesome people.
Hey, Dave. Great card.
We're all players in the game of life. Get a job and hope it pays all right. We're in debt now from all our long. Scared of death, we'll end up broken all alone. Find
Come on over.
ourselves a lovely spouse. Oh, you'll do. Have a couple kids by us. We've ensured and secured our retirement. Will we end up millionaires? Oh, countryside acres residence. Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
100?
Tell me,
Really cool, John. He's cheating.
maybe you can help me out.
I'm just sad that's the last time I get to see John flip that game board over. We might have to include that in some bumper later. But I am so delighted to have this time to talk with you all and to share some of the knowledge that these amazing women are going to share with you all. I'd like to just take a minute, start here with Marcy and work our way down. Y'all introduce yourselves and talk just a little bit about your families, kind of your family home environment. So go ahead.
My name is Marcy Reynolds. I have a 29-year-old, two 26-year-olds. I have two amazing son-in-laws, and I have a 6-month-old grandbaby. I represent the single parents, and I also homeschooled my kids, so I have a lot of knowledge about that.
Yeah, you didn't miss that or hear that wrong. She was a single mom and she homeschooled. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. Go ahead, Susan.
I'm Susan Brown, and I have a 30-year-old and a 28-year-old. I've been married for 33 years. I was a children's pastor for 20 years. I was actually Emily's children's pastor, so I'm very excited to be here. And I guess, as you can see, I'm the orange person, as I wear my orange proudly. But I'm excited to be able to share with you guys today.
My name is Danielle Epps, and it's taken all of the willpower I can muster to not make a comment on the color orange. So let me just go on and say that Reginald and I celebrated our 22nd anniversary on Thursday, and we have a 20-year-old and 18-year-old who will graduate this Thursday, which means there will be lots of tears as we move through our panel discussion. And then I have a 16-year-old baby boy.
Awesome. And for those who don't know, I'm going to talk way less than them, but I have 4 kids. My oldest is 15, and then I have 12 and 10 and 6. So that's the spread, 1 boy and 3 girls. So I'm going to learn a lot, and I already have learned a lot. And one of the funniest things that happened on our call, if you didn't pick up on this, Danielle is the biggest Alabama sports fan I think I've probably ever met. And there's at least one Auburn fan up here and 1 person wearing orange. So it was hard for Danielle to do this. She must love you all an awful lot. Well, hey, listen, when we talked earlier this week, we were kind of sharing through some things. One of the things we just said is that parenting's hard. And so just a real quick, just to give some context, I want you to raise your hand if you feel like you always got parenting right. I hope you find some comfort in that. My hand's not up either, by the way. Some of you all might, and if you do, I want to talk, okay? But none of us feel like we got it right, but all of us kind of feel like our kids are in the direction we wanted them to go, right? So one of the things I thought I might start with, let's just start with some easy things. Let's think about community for a second. So I mentioned a lot about village a minute ago, and so Susan, I'd like you to start with this. How is it that we as parents might be able to build community without falling into that comparison trap? You know, like, oh, look at their family. Their pictures are so put together. Their kids are so nice. I'm just, you know, we see that on social media. We step away from it, but we can't do this alone. So what might you say to parents who are in that place?
Well, one of the things that I've said to Drew the other day was that when my kids were younger, we made our family a team. And so we would talk about Team Brown and the things that we thought were important for us to do when we were in public or when we were at home. We wanted our kids to know that these were the rules that we followed, and these were the things that we held onto as values. And so we didn't allow them to treat other people badly. You know, even when my youngest one was little, she would hide behind us and not want to talk, and we're like, you know, the Browns don't do that. We speak when somebody speaks to us. We tell them thank you, those kind of things. And as an orange person, I see that you have the opportunity to have all of these people speak into your kids' lives. And when Drew was talking, I was over here just shaking my head going, yes, You know, when you come to church and you drop them off, you have all these people who are knowledgeable in this, and they're going through some of the same things that you are. So surround yourself with people who believe the same thing that you believe. It was very comforting to know that when my girls were going through something hard, that they had people who were going to say the exact same thing that I did. They may go to that Sunday school teacher or that person who was a leader in our church and say, well, you know, my mom has grounded me because of this. And that person would look at them and say, well, your mom should have grounded you for that. You know, so it's really comforting to have people backing you up and saying, yes, that's exactly what your mom should have done during that time. So surround yourself with people who believe what you believe, and don't be afraid, if you get it wrong, to say, I'm sorry. You know, tell your kids, I'm sorry, I got it wrong, I messed up. Let's start this over and do it again.
Yeah, Danielle, I think you were talking about this earlier about apologizing, and could you share a little bit more about that, what it's like to apologize to your kids and why?
Yeah, I am quick to apologize when I've done something wrong, mostly because it rarely happens. No, seriously, one of the main reasons why though is because how our children relate to us. We're teaching them in a way how they're going to relate to their Heavenly Father, Abba Father. And so when I've done something wrong, I apologize to also model to them that when they've done something wrong, they can apologize, and then the relationship is restored. So there isn't a boundary or a wall or a fence. We're not move away from each other because of something wrong that has happened. We're going to move closer to each other, and that just exemplifies how the Father treats us. Like if we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive us of our sin and cleanse us from all unrighteousness, and immediately the relationship is restored. And so we are in a way modeling for them how to respond to their Abba Father, and that's the direction that we are pushing them towards, really leading them towards.
Yeah, I love that. And by the way, she just worked in a perfect evangelical gospel presentation in the middle of her parenting advice. Danielle for the win. Marcy, when we were talking, and I hope I'm not stealing this from something you were going to say later, but when we were talking this week, you shared probably the most interesting piece of advice that I've ever heard about this kind of thing, conflict resolution. And as a single mom, you had to kind of be specific in the way that you did this with your kids. So would you share that with them, what you told us about your kids and how you talked about things that were hard?
So when my kids were little, you know, it's really hard being just the single parent and just relying on yourself. And when my kids were little, they had a lot of questions, and I had a lot of answers. And when they would ask some of the really hard questions, I got embarrassed. I mean, they were embarrassed to ask, I was embarrassed to answer. So we came up with a new technique where we would just sit back to back and we would talk, and you know, they could ask those really embarrassing questions. I couldn't see how red their face was. They couldn't see how red my face was when I was answering those. But you know, I feel like it's just really important that we answer those really hard questions and those embarrassing questions for our children.
Yeah. The thing that I loved about that was, think about this in your relationship with your kids. Sometimes you need to be able to look each other in the eye, and there's importance to that. But especially for a single mom, in your case, they're asking questions that maybe they would typically ask a dad, or they would ask a male role model, but they trust you and they love you. And so in order to get over that, you just found space to just say, well, you don't have to, we'll sit, we're connected and our backs are touching and we're right here, but this way you can just share what's really on your heart. I really, really, truly love that. I want to work through some of the age things for a minute. And so I want to ask as we start, Danielle, I think, is the one I asked to do this one. What's the best parenting advice you've ever heard or implemented for parenting during the infant and toddler years?
Yeah, so the best piece of advice I had, and I give it all the time, was just to embrace it. And this goes back to what Susan was saying about community. I had moms, older moms, mom of older kids in my life who were kind of leading me along the way that I could look up to, really modeled and became role models and examples for me. And the thing that they told me, because I had a newborn, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, was just to embrace it. Because honestly, for those of us who've been there before, it's a tough season. They're crying, you're crying, they can't communicate, you don't know what's going on, you can't go anywhere without a diaper bag and wipes, and 2 changes of clothes, and this one has this favorite snack, and it's just all the things. And this is just like a trip, maybe to the mailbox. You got to get all of the things together. But it is so true, as I said earlier, and I'll probably say several times, my second son is graduating on Thursday, and it does go by faster than you believe and faster than you want it to. So don't rush it. Don't try to resist the temptation to, I can't wait until they're talking. I can't wait until they're walking. I can't wait until this, because then you're going to miss where they are right now. And we say around here, it is just a phase, so don't miss it. Embrace every phase, because you will one day want those sleepless nights back. You think that you will not, but you will one day miss those sleepless nights. So don't miss it while you're in the middle of it.
Y'all got anything you want to add to that one? I want to make space. I had a joke, but I want you guys to keep me from saying it, so I'm going to let it go.
Well, I think it's funny because now I'm a grandparent as well. I didn't say that a few minutes ago, but I have an 18-month-old granddaughter and a 10-year-old granddaughter. So we're kind of in the middle of this toddler thing right now with the 18-month-old. And it's funny that my daughter and my son-in-law, when the baby was coming, they were like, we don't need you. They live in Atlanta, Georgia, and she was like, we don't need you to come and stay with us. We got this. It's going to be fine. We can do it. And the second that baby got there and they had no idea what to do, they're like, Mom, help, and so I ended up staying for almost 4 weeks with them, trying to help them get prepared, and they didn't think they needed me. So rely on those people. Don't say you don't need them. You're gonna need them, especially during those times.
That's for sure. Just a quick show of hands. Is anyone in here, when their kids was a toddler, they've made such a mess of a car seat, you've just thrown it away? Yeah. I love it. Thank you. You're my people, by the way. You wash it 3 or 4 times, and then by the time you got your second or third kid, you're like, just buy another one. It's not worth it. You'll never get it put back together. So, Susan, while you're up here, what's the best parenting advice you've heard or implemented for parenting during the elementary school years?
Well, elementary is my favorite time. I love elementary kids, and because I think they're not afraid to ask you anything or say anything. You never know what you're going to hear. You're going to pray for those pets that are dying. You're going to pray for that turtle to come back to life or whatever it is during that time. But for me, somebody told me, and I was like, that just seems so simple. But they said, more is caught than taught. And the fact that we were raising our girls, and they were just 22 months apart, and we were going to church and doing all those things, but we walked into a parenting class, and it absolutely changed our life. We realized that, yes, we were doing some of those things we needed to do, taking them to church and stuff, but when we walked out of the church doors, they didn't see us pray. They didn't see us reading our Bible. They saw us going to church, and that was about it. And so for me, during that time, realizing that they weren't seeing us be the example that they needed, they weren't growing in their relationship with God either. And so during that time of elementary school, 70% of kids come to know Christ before the age of 13. Yeah. Those are the times that we most need to let our kids see us being in prayer for them, in prayer for their teachers and all of these people that are involved in their lives, but also sitting there reading your Bible. And if you're not doing that where your kids see you do it all the time, then you're missing a great opportunity to be an example for them.
Yeah, I really love that. I know it's a little different context for me, but one of the things that happened, it was really interesting when my kids growing up having the pastor in the house, was they only thought I read the Bible or only prayed for church, like it was just a church thing. And so when I found myself in different times, they're like, hey, you're working on your sermon? I'm like, no, I'm just studying. And it was a shock to them, right? But at the same time, what you're talking about is kind of our mindset of partnering with y'all as parents is, you get your kids so many more hours than we do. At most, we're going to end up with your kids 50 hours a year, and y'all get the rest of them, right? So we can't be the sole disciplers in your kids' lives, but we can help you win. We can't be where they are all the time, but we can be with you and help you win as a parent, and that's really our huge goal, especially in those preschool and elementary school years, and then through our youth group too, which we're going to get Marcy to talk about this one. So Marcy, what is the best parenting advice that you've heard or seen implemented for parenting during the middle school and high school years?
The best advice that I could give is just be there for your kids. Be the example, be that praying parent, whether they're watching, whether they're not watching, just like what you were talking about. just be there. Teach your children. Teach them your values. Teach them where you come from. Teach them, you know, just the different things that you want them to know, such as count change, or just all the different things that you feel like they need to be the adults that they're about to be. That this goes back to, this is a really awkward age for them. It's really awkward as a parent to answer a lot of those questions that they do have. But be honest and truthful, and get your kids prepared, because, you know, they're about to go out into the world.
Yeah, this is a theme we've talked through a lot, but authenticity in parenting is something that we're often afraid of. You know, I don't want my kids to see me as, they need to see me as perfect, but we're not perfect. And so when they do see you imperfect, then you know, you try to cover it up. But the truth is, being authentic and helping them live a practical life and figure out how to do this when they step out is really important. Danielle, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you talked this week about watching one of your kids get in the car to drive to the beach, and the difference in parenting between having them where you can take them everywhere you want to go to now they're leaving the house. You want to speak to what it's like to be in that phase of parenting right now?
Yeah, it is challenging. It is very challenging because you want to shield and protect them from all of the bumps and bruises and hurts, and we just can't. And I shared that when they were really little, I was afraid to let them out of my presence, and whenever they were not with me, I was always like praying fervently for the Lord to just watch over them and to protect them and to take care of them. And one day the Holy Spirit just gently prompted me and said, he said, who do you think does all of that when they're with you? It's like, even when they're in my presence, he is still the one who is watching over them and protecting them. And so it was actually it was very calming, it was very soothing. It was an answer to my prayer to know that he watches over them when they're with me and when they are away from me. And so I'm thankful for that.
Awesome. All right, so for all of us with young kids or don't have kids yet, or we're getting started, we're terrified, what's a piece of encouragement that you'd like to give to the parents out here in the room today? Anybody can jump in with this one.
Well, for me, like I said, I think that the most important thing is to surround yourself with people who are like-minded, who believe what you believe. And when you do that, you have built up a support system that will not fail. But, ultimately we have to go to God with all of it and let him be the guiding source for us. And so when you're out there and you're making those decisions, enter each phase of life prayerfully, asking God to guide you and help you do the very best that you can as a parent, because that's ultimately what our goal is, to be the best parent that we can be.
Yeah. It's so cool. Like and this is not a brag thing, okay, so don't hear it this way, but earlier this week, one of my kids got an award at school. And I was there at the awards day, but I'm sitting in the crowd, and he walks up to get the award, and then my phone starts going off, and I get text messages from, like, all over the room, people taking pictures, like, your kid just got an award. And I'm like, I know, I'm in the room, right? But I have these people who care about my family, and they care, like, they're almost like their kids are my kids, and my kids are their kids, and that's a big deal. Like, I can't stress that enough, okay? I know we talk about this a lot, that we say life is complicated, you want to get it right, we want to help, and we feel like life is better connected. You hear us say those two things all the time. It is. It's better for you, it's better for your kids, it's better for your family to be connected. And we live in such a disconnected world where, we can go through the whole day without talking with anybody if we really tried. Life is better when you don't do that. I'm just going to throw that out. Any other words of encouragement you want to give to our parents before we wrap this up today?
I would just like to say that no matter where you're at in life, you are enough.
Yeah.
You don't have to play the role of a father if you're the mother. You don't have to play the role of a mother if you're the father. You just be the person that you're supposed to be in that child's life, and you are enough. Even though, like me, I never felt like I was, but I am.
Awesome.
I just want to add that the Lord has entrusted our children to us. whether you are a biological mom, an adopted mom, a foster mom, a stepmom, a friend mom, our children have been entrusted to us by the Lord. And sometimes we see, like we have our money. We know that 100% comes from Him. We give Him back the 10%. Same thing with our time, with our resources, with our possessions. But when it comes to our children, because they are so treasured, we see them as ours. These are my sons. These are my kids. When the truth is, they also belong to the Lord. He has just chosen us to be their parent, to be their mom. And so there's a lot of faith, there's a lot of comfort, there's a lot of peace that comes in knowing that we've been selected by Him to parent these children, and so we give back to Him the things, the people that He has given to us, trusting that He's going to lead and guide us as we lead and guide Him. That if we are abiding in Christ, we're staying in His presence, we're staying in the Word, we're staying in community with one another, we're seeking Him, He will be found by us, and that's going to allow us to parent, to shepherd, to guide our children into fulfilling the plan and the purpose that He has for them. They are in your home for a reason. It was deliberate. It was intentional. They have been entrusted to you by the Lord, and He will equip you with the tools that you need to see these boys and these girls become these incredible men and women, and not necessarily success the way we define success, but faithful the way our Father defines faithful. So, chin up. You got this. You've been chosen. You can do it. You are doing it, and well done. Well done to you.
Awesome. Can you show your love to our mothers who came up to share their time with us today? Thank you all so much. I'm gonna say a quick word of prayer, and then we'll wrap up our time. So would you bow your heads with me? Father God, I just want to thank you so much for this time we've had today. God, there's a lot of people in this room who, they're trying to figure out their next step in parenting. They're trying to figure out what to do and whether they're doing it right. So God, would you just encourage them with the fact that they don't have to do it alone, that there are people in this room that love them and care for them and want to love their kids and want to care for them. But beyond that, God, even if they didn't have any of us, they got you, and you trust them and you love them and you're going to be with them every step of the way. God, encourage us with the reality that none of us get it right all the time, and that we can parent in a direction, and we can choose that overall, even though we don't get it right all the time, we can move our kids in a direction of being closer to you and moving into the bright future you have for each and every one of them. God, we love you. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all so much for coming to TCAT. Happy Mother's Day. We'll see you all next week, okay? Take care.